But first, let's get back to my in-depth interview with longtime Bush senior advisor Karl Rove. After 8 tough years in the White House, there are some hard feelings among some former members of the Bush administration and lots of unanswered questions. You write at length in the book also about the Valerie Plame, Joe Wilson identifying her as a covert CIA operative and your role in all of that. You were eventually cleared by the special prosecutor. Earlier in the week, you told Matt Lauer that you don't have to, you have nothing to apologize to Scott McClellan, who was then the White House press secretary. He then came back last night and he said this. Listen to what Scott McClellan said.
The interesting thing is that Karl Rove actually did apologize to me on 3 occasions. Back in July of 2005, Karl personally called me on the phone, said, I apologize for what you're going through. The next day in the senior staff meeting, he apologized to me in front of the entire senior staff. And then later that day, I came back to my office after the press briefing and found a handwritten letter in my chair written by Karl Rove apologizing yet again.
Is that true?
Yeah, look, I said, I'm sorry you're having to go through all of this, because he was right in the front taking blows left and right. But again, Scott McClellan's correctly informed the press. I did not give Valerie Plame's name to Robert Novak. I didn't even know her name. Robert Novak talked to Richard Armitage, the Undersecretary of State, who told him about Valerie Plame. My conversation with Robert Novak involved Novak telling me about his contact with some unnamed party who told him this. And when he told me Valerie Plame works at the CIA and sent her husband to Niger, I said, I've heard that too. If he'd said to me, can you confirm that? I would have had to say, no, I can't confirm that. But that was my participation. I thought it was interesting that when everybody thought I leaked Valerie Plame's name to Bob Novak, people camped out in front of my doorstep. Some of your CNN colleagues were frequent visitors in front of my house. But when in August of 2006, America found out that it was Richard Armitage who had leaked the name to Robert Novak, what we got was an exculpatory editorial from the Washington Post, and the media didn't camp out on his doorstep. There were no drumbeats for sending him off to prison. This thing went away. But as long as they thought it was me, there was an interest. And I very early on got every signal whatsoever, got every signal from the FBI and then the prosecutor that I was not in jeopardy because of anything that I might have said to Robert Novak about Valerie Plame. They were interested in side issues, which I describe in the book, which were really extraordinary. And when they finally laid them out on the table, and my attorney, Bob Luskin of Patton Boggs, told them what was behind that, Fitzgerald's comment to him was, you've rocked my world. But it's very odd. I
guess the question is, were you totally upfront with Scott McClellan in describing the nature of the conversation with Bob Novak?
I said I did not leak her name. I didn't know her name. I had a conversation with Novak. Look, I'm sorry he went through what he went through, but you know, I told the Chief of Staff and the White House counsel, and the President called me about it, and I told the FBI when I first met with them every detail about my conversation with Robert Novak, and it was clear. For 2 years they said simply, you're not a target. We simply you're a witness. And it was only after 2 years when they developed a convoluted theory that had nothing whatsoever to do with Valerie Plame or Joe Wilson that I got into jeopardy, and that was over a very odd issue involving a member of the press.
This is how Scott McClellan summed up you in that interview he did with MSNBC. Listen to this.
Karl Rove is someone who's always had this mentality that politics is war, and he believes in winning at all cost, and that means embracing political spin and political manipulation to achieve what your goals are. And you know, it's kind of like the Japanese soldier long after World War II is over, that is refusing to accept or believe that World War II has ended. How do you reason with someone like that?
You want to respond to Scott McClellan?
No, I really don't. I mean, comparing me to some Japanese soldier stuck in a jungle on some Southeast Pacific island is just a little strange. So I'll let his words stand by for themselves.
I'll stand by.